Let's get to our first discussion for today on the show. Let me tell you first that the Chief Executive Officer of the Financial Derivatives, Mr. Bismarck Riwani, has expressed support for the proposed telecom tariff hike, citing its potential to enhance productivity and moderate inflation in the economy. Mr. Riwani highlighted the economic benefits of the tariff adjustment, which has been proposed by telecom operators and is currently under review by the Nigerian Communications Commission. Now, telecom operators have submitted a proposal to the NCC seeking a 100% increase in tariff to address rising operational costs, including inflation and higher service delivery expenses. Meanwhile, the Minister of Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy, Dr. Bosun Tijani, has confirmed that Nigeria's telecommunications tariff will soon increase. He, however, assured Nigerians that it will not be 100% that telecom operators are pushing for at the moment. Dr. Tijani disclosed this to me in a chat on Wednesday when he appeared on Business Nigeria Live. Dr. Ayodeji Ebo is the Managing Director, Chief Business Officer at Optimus By Afrinvest. He joins me to continue this conversation. Dr. Ebo, good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining the show. I think it's your first time this year, so I can say Happy New Year to you.
Yes, Joe. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to our viewers.
Dr. Ayodeji Ebo, good afternoon. How are you today?
Yeah, fine, thank you. Can you hear me?
All right. Let's start with the economic realities on ground. We see inflation on the high side. We see the economic reality hitting hard. And locals, for some time, almost a decade, have not reviewed their tariffs. But now they have come up to say, we want a 100% increase. First, what is your understanding of the sector and, of course, sustainability of that sector?
Okay, thank you very much. And I think that if we're going to be realistic with ourselves, it's long overdue. The review is long overdue. So when you look at what are their major costs, most of their costs are in dollars. So when you look at the exchange rate 10 years ago, or let's even say 3 years ago, compared to what the exchange rate is today, just looking at 2024, the exchange rate depreciated by close to about 40%. So it means that if they normally procure some of the equipment that people will be used to is their base stations. Yes, it's been leased, but if they procure like a generator for, let's say, $100,000 before, now that same $100,000 to cure that particular equipment would be almost times 5 or times 6 compared to the costs when the last review happened. So you would see that the sector have just been living on life support. You also look at the inflation rate, which would impact on cost, even if it's a Naira cost that has been increasing over the years. This is very evident when you even check their results. MTN is quoted in the Nigerian Stock Exchange. You would see, I looked at 9 months, the foreign exchange losses was about 909 billion naira that was recorded, which as a result of FX. Also, you also look at the rate at which cost has increased on a year-on-year basis. It's been significant, almost 30 to 40%. So there's a need for that review for the economy to be able to support. So you look at the growth of that sector, about 6.9% in Q3 2024. There's also been supporting the economy. So if the sector collapses, it's going to have a major impact. It's almost unlikely, but it's really going to have a major impact. Look at those that depend on them. We're currently running mostly a remote system in Nigeria in terms of work. A lot of people work remotely. Developers, the IT system also depend on that. So there's hardly any business that doesn't depend on technology. So they are an enabler, and their sustainability is really very paramount to the economy. If anything happens, there was a time when I think, is it in May 1 fiber cable had serious issue. We saw the downtime, what we experienced within in the country. So now imagine the communication system, companies shutting down. It's almost like the economy is shutting down. We can't have this interview without internet. So they are really very strategic. They are systemically important to the growth of the economy.
Agree with you. But there seems to be a lot of pushback with regards to this tariff thing. And some would tell you the 100% increase would hit the pocket of Nigerians, considering the economic realities now, Dr. Ebo. I don't know if you would agree with me. The price of fuel at the moment and all of that, the price of diesel and what is affecting businesses. So what do you think, if really there should be an increase in your suggestions? What sort of percentage are you looking at? Some have said 40, some have said 50. Government says, no, it's not going to be 100%, but definitely there will be an increase.
Okay, yeah, so I would agree that, if suddenly we are waking up as a country to see that there's a need to review, it shouldn't be done at once. Just like then when we're advising for subsidy, it should be phased. So now that the regulators and the government have seen that there's a need for that review, I would suggest between that 40 to 50% initially, then over time, they can still get that 100%, because the reality is that the costs have moved by more than 200 to 300% from the last time it was reviewed. So, but this has to be faced. Given the current situation, electricity tariff has been increased. We're still trying to survive from that. The fuel price have also been increased. But, when we also need to look at it objectively, this is the private sector. Thanks to the regulators that are also having that oversight to ensure that prices are controlled. But these are private sector that are very strategic. It's only when you have maybe governments, then when you used to also have government playing in this space. So there's a need to sustain this particular business and looking at their strategic importance to the economy. So I would say I agree that there should be an increase, but I also don't agree that it should be once. It shouldn't be 100% once. It should be phased. We can see the roadmap. If it's going to be 150%, we can say within the next 2 years, next 3 years, this is what we are. And what it will do is it will also open up opportunities, because even for potential investors, they are not encouraged to invest in that space, given the contraction that we are seeing, because as cost is growing faster than the way they are earning revenue.
Forward, government has, of course, come up to say something will be done. But some also say that these telcos have other means they could generate revenue, aside from increasing tariffs. Do you also agree to that? And some will also tell you that people even use data much this time around. And if there's an increase in that, I'm sure there will also be increase on data. So how do you see us wading through all of this moving forward in 2025?
Yes, the truth is that when we look at disposable income would be impacted based on the different data cited that Nigerians spend an average between 2% on data and airtime of their income on a monthly basis. So I think the survey used between those that earn between 30,000 and 150,000, and they spend between 2% and 8% on data. So it means that if I spent 10,000 naira before, if it's 50% increase, it means I will spend 15,000. If I used to spend 100,000 on a monthly basis, it means I will now be spending 150,000. Definitely it will impact on disposable income. But we also need to look at, if this particular company, if they shut down today, what the impact they would have. So I always, when I look at things, how we started, in those days, even if to communicate, people travel, people have lost their lives traveling when there was no easy communication,
Yeah,
things that they
yeah.
could have resolved. Meetings are holding online, people are making money online. Yeah, so we need to be realistic to ensure that that sector is sustained, and it would impact on us. It would also increase the cost. It's like what happened when fuel increase was raised. We are still trying to even recover from that. Also, electricity tariff was also raised, but for us to enjoy this benefit, you see that for electricity tariff that has been raised, for some major areas, there's a bit of improved supply, because even for the disco distribution companies, they know that for every 1 hour that you don't supply power and people are on metered, they know the revenue that they lose. So there's an incentive to supply power to those areas. So these are, I think we need to look at it holistically. It's really going to impact on our pockets. So we have to be realistic, but it's an enabler for businesses, and we need to also support that particular sector.
There are other challenges facing the telecommunications industry. You agree with me? Vandalism, and there have been issues of, they're also talking about hiking the price of diesel because they need to power some of their facilities to be able to, deliver to consumers. So all of these other challenges, how do you also see government and, of course, the operators sorting them out as we move on in 2025? Because it's very important that that is addressed. Many of these telcos have faced vandalism that has really affected their facility. You talked about there was a time there was even a cable issue that almost cut everyone off. All of these issues, how do you see operators and, of course, government shaking hands to address them in the year, moving on this year?
Okay, very, very, very good question. And for us to even ease that, the impact of that increase, or if we can come to a roundtable and government is saying from their own hand, how can I help you to reduce your costs, such that if you are looking at increasing it to 100%, if I help you save costs by 20, 30%, would that be fine? So power, in some other countries, they don't need to buy generators for most of the base stations, even if it's been outsourced to. You see that they have two standby generators, even some with solar, to be able to power that. And the insecurity, they need to provide security men even to most of those base stations. So the cost is really very high of running the business. So it's part of the inefficiency. So for government to come into the, we need to see how we want to improve on security in Nigeria. Secondly, how do we want to provide power? If power is stable, the cost that you look at diesel costs compared to using the normal electricity, it will be cheaper. So that would also reduce the pressure on them to increase price. And these are areas where I think government can come in, providing that favorable and enabling environments. And the vandalization, it's not an excuse, but it's the poverty level. So that, I see that's a medium to long-term solution. But the immediate solution is about providing, if we provide power, it will reduce the cost of power for them, and that will also reduce the pressure to increase cost.
Well, I spoke to the minister on Wednesday, like I said earlier in my introduction, and he harped on the fact that jobs will be created. And even Mr. Riwani yesterday was quoted to have said this would help to address inflation if this is done. Well, I don't know what your understanding is of these two submissions, but putting it side by side, what also do you make of the future of the telecommunications industry in Nigeria?
Okay, thanks. To me, I think it would impact on inflation. That's the way I see it, because if I used to spend 50,000 naira on data, it means that I may need to spend 70 or 80. It means I'm going to spend more. And when you also look at it in terms of prices, price is also is going up. And I don't expect, because it's almost a necessity, the demand is inelastic. So we'll continue to see that. Well, I agree that it will create more jobs. And in the sense that once we have these companies are running, we're trying to look at an IT-led economy. Most people are working remotely. They are working for outside the countries. And so they are able to sustain that momentum. So the more we invest in that IT sector, invest in people, IT skills, that is how job will be created. I don't see I don't see jobs, most of the telecoms expanding more significantly. But we can also look at it from this perspective that, like I mentioned earlier, investment. So we would see that they would also have more investors, which can also lead to expansion into some of the areas where they currently are not, in terms of coverage. So that's, we think that would help. But in terms of inflation, I think that it would have a bit of impact on inflation level, given that we would have to spend more on data.
Oh, okay. So you don't think that would in any way bring down inflation, or maybe in the long run it could? You're not thinking along that line at all?
I'm not, for now, I'm not thinking in that line, but I respect that view.
Of course. It's okay. So finally, I talked about the outlook for the industry. If things work well, like you experts will say, all things being equal, if business and all that works as planned, do you see the sector contributing more to the GDP of Nigeria's economy? It's doing pretty well at the moment, but it could
So I agree that it's going to contribute more to because now they will have more capacity for expansion. They will have more capacity to improve the quality of their services, because investors will now be encouraged for them to invest within that space. And
when the tariff is cost reflective, right?
Yes, the contribution would increase. And because, what people would likely adjust is other things. Data, like some people say, is life. People are so used to saying an average Nigerian spend about 6 hours on social media based on statistics. People are already wired within that space, maybe also to calm the stress. But people will continue. They will not alternate that for some other things. So I think that the spending on data and spending on airtime will not reduce. Nigerians would prefer to reduce other things to be able to sustain that lifestyle.
Indeed, it's a good way to live it. Dr. Ayodeji Ebo, thank you so much for your insights, as usual, into this very important topic of discourse. We'll await the NCC to come up with the approved increase, and we'll see how we'll react, and Nigerians will react to this. Dr. Ayodeji Ebo is the Managing Director, Chief Business Officer with Optimus by Afrinvest. Thank you so much, and do enjoy your weekend.
Yeah, thank you so much, and it's great to be here.
We're still to come on the show.